His Excellency Soksapana, Senior Advisor to the Royal Government of Cambodia, Dr. Sang Sinavith, Director, Department of International Customs Cooperation at the General Department of Customs and Excise, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. I am Jeremy Gross, the Director of Capacity Building at the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, ERIA, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this fifth and sadly final public-private dialogue in our Unpacking the RCEP Agreement series. Today's dialogue will focus on customs procedures and trade facilitation. For this topic, we are very pleased to co-host this event appropriately with the General Department of Customs and Excise of Cambodia, the department most focused on these issues. To deliver opening comments on behalf of the department, let me invite Dr. Sang Sinavith, Director of the Department of International Customs Cooperation at the General Department of Customs and Excise, to deliver his opening comments. Dr. Sinavith, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Cross, for the Jeremy Cross for the giving the floor to me. And first of all, I would like to say apologize to this important meeting. My DDG Pang Wayne could not make himself available to attend this important meeting due to his very tight schedule. Let me start my brief. Very good morning, His Excellency Soksapana, Senior Advisor to the Royal Government of Cambodia, Mr. Jeremy Cross, Director of Capacity Building, Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. In short, we call it ERIA. Mr. Robin Flynn, First Secretary, Australian Embassy in Cambodia, Mr. Sebastian Cote Sangse, Deputy Director, ASEAN Trade Center, Mr. Puj Peng, Executive Director, Triumph Link Logistics Co-Chair of Custom Private Partnership Mechanism Technical Working Group 3, Mr. Prayat Chitraka, Country Manager, DHL Express Cambodia. Excellency, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, on behalf of His Excellency Pang Wayne, Deputy Director General of the General Department of Customs and Excise of Cambodia, I would like to warm welcome Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, to participate this fifth public-private dialogue unpacking the RCEP Agreement, Custom Procedure and Trade Facilitation. I would like to grateful thank to ERIA, Gdce, and especially to Swan Galibot, International Trade Consultant, ERIA, for making efforts to make the today program happen. This program is designed for stakeholders from private sector, forwarders, and government agency to share knowledge, experience, update the status of FTAs, National Single Window, Trade Facilitation, Custom Procedure after the COVID-19 pandemic. Before I start to inform the meeting about the RCEP Agreement, Custom Procedure and Trade Facilitation in brief, I would like to brief the meeting about the progress development of the custom and trade facilitation in Cambodia in general. As being one of the key revenue collectors and trade facilitation, Gdce is a competent and innovative organization dedicated to delivering effective and efficient service to all stakeholders of trades, including importers, exporters, forwarders, and in keeping with standard and best practice. Gdce is also make sure the import and export duty and fee and other charge are collected for the government's revenue. At the same time, Gdce role is to facilitate the legitimate trades and safeguard society through the border control protects from the smuggling, frauds, money laundering, and terrorism. During COVID-19 pandemic from 2019 to early of 2022, the spread and persistence of the COVID-19 pandemic caused many issues. The disruption of international trade supply chain and logistic border shutdown, transportation, cancellation, the decline of tourism, real estate, service, construction, and other activity have caused people lost jobs and revenue. However, the government of Cambodia introduced one round of policy to support the Cambodia's economy during the post-COVID-19. For Gdce, with the support from the Ministry of Economy and Finance, some measure for custom to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, such as the first one, add more the green land on import garments raw materials to cooperate with GMAT to discuss with the freight forwarders and custom brokers for transparent fee settlement. 3, collaborate and coordinate with the relevant stakeholders to make sure that the provided service are going smoothly and interconnected. And 4, approval of free export of rice. As the result, the import and export of Cambodia economy have been strong so far. I would like to mention a few points that the export of the garment sector and the agricultural products, especially to the US and to the EU, still very strong. Let's say that in 2021, the export to the US increased by nearly 20%, I can say around 20% to the US. If we're talking about in the US currency, it's around the 19 billion US dollar. We export the garment and footwear to the US. Recently, the World Customs Organization encouraged all the members to use the smart border concept, smart border for seamless trade, and some can say that smart custom, smart borders, and smart connectivity. This initiative advocates adoption of innovative measures and application of new generation technologies to achieve smart custom control, smart custom governance, and smarter custom cooperation, and enhanced connectivity among all parties in the international supply chain and across the region and the globe. In this connection to the future of the Cambodian custom innovation and plan, I would like to inform the meeting that the development partners such as the EU and German Right Plus Cambodia support the Gdce in WTO TFA implementation on review Cambodian National Single Window, AO program, pre-arrival processing, and CPTF homepage and other support matter related to the custom. For the IMF support Gdce in the custom law review, and for the JICA provide long-term expert for trade facilitation, free port concept, AO program, and also other the training costs. And for the Global Alliance through the Swiss contact has provided TA to Gdce as well. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, you might be aware the RCEP took effect on January 1st this year. The latest ratification of the RCEP agreement, not to mention the ASEAN Plus FTAs in which Cambodia has engaged over many years, is the very testimony of how far the country undergone. As known, the free trade agreement will bring a lot of benefit to the country other than job creation, skills, further innovation, and more investment. So we believe that these are very positive measures for Cambodia. The RCEP is a mega trade pact between 10 ASEAN member states and its FTAs partner, namely China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. The fifth public-private dialogue today attributed to the ERIA is indeed a remarkable step for public and private discussion for Cambodian business benefit, as the country will earn more knowledge and experience and benefit in the implementing RCEP agreement. Today event will give a great opportunity to private sector to know more about the RCEP agreement, especially custom procedure and trade facilitation under RCEP. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the participation of our qualified resource person from Gdce and from the stakeholder would provide us the opportunity to learn from them the knowledge and experience that we could draw on or incorporate them in RCEP implementation fruitfully. For today video conference from the Gdce General Department of Customs and Excise of Cambodia, we will have two presentations. The first one, the implementation of the RCEP agreement, will be presented by Ms. Sang Sinavith from the International Customs Cooperation Department of the General Department of Customs and Excise of Cambodia, and the number 2 of the presentation is the status of National Single Window and alignment with ASEAN Single Window, will be presented by Information Technology Department, Mr. Supanarat. Before I conclude my remark, I would like to express my appreciation to ERIA and Gdce for organizing and sponsoring this 5th public-private dialogue. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I strongly believe that all participants will benefit a lot from this event. Now I would like to declare the official opening the 5th public-private dialogue Unpacking the RCEP Agreement, Custom Procedure and Trade Facilitation, and I wish you all a productive and successful discussion. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sang Sinavith, for your welcoming comments, and once again also for co-hosting today's event with ERIA. Customs and trade facilitation is a topic ERIA has been much involved in at the research and policy level at ASEAN, as together with the ASEAN Trade Facilitation Joint Consultative Committee, the ATF-JCC, ERIA has developed the ASEAN Seamless Trade Facilitation Indicators. The indicators are based on a survey of major trade-related government agencies from each ASEAN member state, and includes measures on transparency, engagement with the private sector, measures of clearance and release formalities, export and import formalities, measures for transit and transportation facilitation. So whilst that is at the ASEAN level, and despite the pandemic, it's very good to see how much effort has been given to improve the trade environment in ASEAN since 2020. Today, I very much look forward to hearing all the discussions about customs and trade facilitations under the RCEP agreement. Today's discussion would not be possible without the support ERIA receives from the Australian government, which for the last 7 years has generously supported ERIA's capacity building programme. So may I offer my thanks here to the Government of Australia. The moderator for today's dialogue is international trade expert, Mr. Sven Kallebo. He will introduce today's presenters and panelists at the start of the 2 sessions, as well as himself. So without further ado, may I also thank all of you for joining today's event, which I hope will be helpful to you to understand how to make the RCEP customs procedures and trade facilitation rules work for you. Thank you, and over to you, Sven.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks very much for the introductions, and Dr. Sinavith. Excellency, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this public-private dialogue on unpacking the RCEP agreement for Cambodian businesses. As Jeremy mentioned, this is the last such event in Cambodia in our series of 5, following our very successful public-private dialogue on e-commerce, on trading goods, rules of origin, trading services, and investment prior to this one earlier this year. And for those of you who are interested, we are running a similar PPD series in Lao PDR as starting next month for our businesses. So Jeremy mentioned who our sponsors are. I'm not going to repeat it. Thank you for that, Jeremy, to cover that for me. So my name is Sven Calvo. I'm the international trade consultant at ERIA, and I'll have the pleasure to be your moderator for today's event. Before we start with this event, with presenting the objective, the agenda, I'd like to echo Jeremy's word and thank both Mr. Pa Eng Veng, the Deputy Director General of the Gdce, and all the colleagues at the Gdce for accepting to co-host this event. We would not be able to do an event on custom procedures and trade facilitation without Gdce. So thank you very much, not only for Dr. Sinavith and DDG, but also for all of you officials who are joining us in this event today. So I'm going to share my screen just to introduce the purpose and the agenda for today. So we are here today to listen to the experts on RCEP and on the custom procedures and trade facilitation, both in Cambodia and outside Cambodia, as part of our Unpacking the RCEP Agreement series. And the reason we have organized the series of events this year is because, as I guess you know, the RCEP has entered into force on January the 1st, 2022, which has created a lot of appetite and interest for the agreement itself. Reason why we are organizing this event only on 5 of the chapters, which were actually those selected by our stakeholders when we did a number of surveys last year on their interest for RCEP. So for those of you who are not familiar with RCEP, you're going to hear a lot about RCEP today. Just to tell you that RCEP is the world's largest trading bloc. It represents basically 30% of the world GDP. It is $2.3 trillion US of trading goods among RCEP members, and 90% tariff on good elimination within the RCEP bloc. And it is expected that the gain from trade diversion will be 60% and gains from trade creation will be 40% once implemented. The RCEP agreement has 20 different chapters. I will leave it to Dr. Sipana to tell us exactly the number of pages in the agreement, because I think he's the only one who has read all the pages of the agreement. So Dr. Sipana, you will tell us how many pages. We have different categories from trading goods to trading services, investment, business environment, as well as general provision and dispute settlement. In ERIA, we have focused on 5 of these chapters, starting with e-commerce, moving to trading goods and rule of origin, then trading services in May. We had investment with His Excellency Sokchen Dasupia from the CDC in June, and today is our last event on PPD. It doesn't mean that area support or the PPDs should stop with this last event. We hope that this will continue, maybe more sector specific or with different stakeholders group, but we hope we have kind of encouraged more businesses to get familiar with what RCEP is all about. In Cambodia, if you look at the news, we have almost daily articles in the newspapers on RCEP. This is just a few examples of what the media are talking about in Cambodia. The fact that it's going to boost Cambodia export, it's going to boost e-commerce development, that Cambodia is the 3rd among the RCEP income gains country in the growth of export, that we have established an advisory council on RCEP, etc., etc. So more and more, the media is taking an interest as well in reporting on the agreement. So with this background, what is the objective of this webinar? We have basically 3 objectives. First of all, to have a good understanding of what is the RCEP chapter on custom procedures and trade facilitation, chapter 4. And for this, we have experts who have negotiated the agreement, who are tasked with implementing the chapter on custom procedures. So we are in very able hands with our lineup of experts. Second, we'll try to show how to appreciate the opportunities created by RCEP, especially for trade facilitation, and how Cambodian custom modernization is triggering more result and impact, hopefully. And finally, and we've been able to do that for the past episode, we also want to use this PPD to identify what are the information gaps, what are the capacity gaps in the private sector to really avail of the opportunities of RCEP and of this chapter. One of the reasons is that we all know that RCEP was negotiated behind closed doors. The private sector was consulted, but most of businesses, at least in Cambodia, are not really aware of what are the different tariff line tariff reductions, what are the opportunities created for investment, for services, for goods. So we hope that this event will help, at least for the chapter 4 on custom procedures and trade facilitation, to share the information on what the agreement is and say about trade facilitation. So we have 3 sessions for this morning. We are going to have a first session that will set the scene on the agreement and on the chapter 4. And for this, we have 3 presenters. We have Mr. Robin Flynn, who is the first secretary at the Australian Embassy here in Phnom Penh. We have Mrs. Up Chansupiet, who is the chief of the Free Trade Office at the Department of International Customs Cooperation at Gdce. And we have Noy Supanaret, who is the deputy chief office at the IT department at the Gdce as well. The second session is our usual private sector panel. We have 3 experts, and I understand Dr. Sinavith will take over Mr. Pa Eng Veng's role in this panel. We have Sebastian Cortez Sanchez from the Asian Trade Center. For those of you familiar with our events, Sebastian works with Deborah, who is our RCEP expert, and Deborah has delegated this task today to Sebastian. So thank you, Deborah, and welcome, Sebastian. We have Mr. Kut Teng, who is the executive director of the Triumph Links Logistics, but is also the co-chair of the Customs Private Partnership Mechanism Technical Working Group number 3 here in Cambodia. We have Mr. Prayak Chitraka, who is the country manager of DHL Express Cambodia. And the third sessions are, well, I don't know how I can introduce Dr. Sipana, but or shall I introduce Dr. Sipana? But I will do it. So Dr. Sok Sipana is the senior advisor to the Royal Government of Cambodia, and Dr. Sipana, or Dr. Sipana, as we should say now, from now on, has agreed to provide a summary of the discussions of today's event, as well as some words of wisdom, I hope, on how we can actually use the RCEP in Cambodia and what's missing in this in the context of the implementation of the agreement for businesses, for government officials, also for the academia and research institute to do more about the implementation and speaking about the implementation. So with this, I would like to start with session 1 with the RCEP chapter on custom procedures and trade facilitation. And as mentioned, for this first session, we have 3 experts. We have Robin Flynn from the Australian Embassy in Cambodia, Mrs. Auk Chansupiet from Gdce, and Mr. Noy Supanaret from Gdce as well. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Robin Flynn to take over and take us through his experience as a negotiator, an Australian negotiator, of negotiating our RCEP, but also trying to demystify or explaining to us what RCEP is and what this chapter on custom procedures and trade facilitation contains. So thank you, Robin, for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Sven. It's a pleasure to be here. As Sven said, my name is Robin Flint with the Australian Embassy in Phnom Penh. And just a little bit of background about me. I am a trade negotiator with the Australian government, having negotiated the customs procedures and trade facilitation chapters in several free trade agreements already, the UK-Australia Free Trade Agreement, which concluded last year, the answer to upgrade negotiations, the Indonesia-Australia Free Trade Agreement, and implementation of CPTF, and of course RCEP as well. So I'll give a very quick presentation today on RCEP, on the chapter on customs procedures and trade facilitation. I'll try to be as quick as possible because it is a very complex chapter to understand. And I'm sure my colleagues will also go into detail about other aspects of the chapter as well. But when it comes to customs procedures and trade facilitation, it's one of the most important chapters in a free trade agreement, in my opinion. When we look at free trade agreements, we tend to focus on market access and tariff reductions when it comes to goods trade. And of course, those are very important. But to be able to facilitate that trade, you have to have, firstly, good rules of origin, which has been talked about in previous ERIA webinars already. But you also need good customs procedures and a very strong rules around how customs agencies will implement a free trade agreement such as RCEP. Good rules around customs really facilitates trade, it builds business confidence, and it facilitates cross-border transaction in goods. It removes barriers to trade, and it really connects strongly with the usage rates of an FTA, such as RCEP. So I'll just share my presentation now. Can everyone see my presentation?
Not yet.
No, not yet, Robin.
Okay. Just... Okay, so you should be able to see it now. Yep.
Yes, you can.
So firstly, what is RCEP? So as Sven said earlier, RCEP is the world's biggest free trade agreement. As a regional or multilateral free trade agreement, RCEP is designed to create a seamless regional marketplace centered around the 10 ASEAN members. So RCEP connects really these 10 ASEAN members at the center of this regional mega trade pact with the economies of Australia and New Zealand. And importantly, it connects the three biggest economies in North Asia, China, Korea, and Japan. So the negotiation of this agreement took almost a decade to complete. So it was negotiated behind closed doors, as Sven had said. And it took quite a long time to negotiate. It started in 2012 and concluded in around 2020. And as we know, it entered into force on 1st of January 2022. So RCEP really comprises of these 15 founding member states: Australia, Brunei, Cambodia, China, Japan, Korea, Laos, Malaysia, New Zealand, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, and Myanmar. And we know that Indonesia and Myanmar are yet to enter the agreement into force. But we know that once all of the 15 members have fully implemented the arrangements of RCEP, it will have great benefits, not just for Cambodia, but for regional trade and post-COVID economic recovery as well. So customs and the chapter on customs and trade facilitation, it's a standard chapter for all FTAs that we see. And that's no different for RCEP. So when we look at RCEP agreement, the more modern RCEP, in WTO RCEP, the WTO are negotiating. We saw that were actually, we know is really the base WTO members, Cambodia, customs across it. So different the customs are real similarities and proceed out. will be traded to China. So some of the articles for the GDCE, we have members of regulations that are coming out to share information that the business community provision within RCEP commits members to allow for the submission of trade and customs documentation prior to the goods arriving. This form of advanced lodgements of documentation greatly reduces the amount of time the goods undergo customs clearances. To the point where in Australia, for example, we have goods that can be cleared for release as soon as they arrive at port. So there's really no lag time when it comes to the importation process. When we look at advanced rulings, for example, RCEP actually goes slightly above the World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement commitments that signatories have committed to. It commits members to allow for customs rulings to be provided to traders upon request for the tariff classification of their goods, whether a good is originating, and for the appropriate method for calculating customs value. So this commitment in RCEP really provides greater certainty for traders, as they can have certainty as to how a customs administration or ministry will treat their product. This really reduces discrepancies that may happen at the border. So traders, whether it's importers or exporters, can really apply to a customs administration for advanced ruling. They can get an assessment about how their goods will be treated, whether it's originating under RCEP, what the customs value might be, so that they can calculate the taxes and fees. And this really provides certainty for the business community. It reduces discrepancies at the border, and it makes the whole process of importing and exporting much quicker, particularly for those larger companies that export a lot and where the risk might be quite large. When it comes to release of goods, RCEP makes very strong commitments to members to maintain procedures to clear goods from customs within specific timeframes. So when it comes to general goods, there's a commitment for customs to release goods 48 hours after arrival of those goods, as long as all necessary requirements have been met, of course. So the inclusion of specific timeframes really goes above and beyond the commitments within the World Trade Organization TFA commitments. And this is about, again, making the whole shipment process quick. It reduces costs for the traders, and it reduces costs also for customs administrations, which have to hold on to goods, as they're being cleared. When we look at a few other key CPTF provisions, we also have perishable goods, paperless trade, authorized operators, and express consignments. So with perishable goods, again, RCEP makes commitments to how customs administrations will treat perishable goods when they come into at the border. So perishable goods are things like food products and agricultural products. And customs administrations are committed to release goods from customs within 6 hours after arrival. Now, again, this commitment provides traders of food and agricultural products with greater certainty that their products will be released quite rapidly after arrival. And it allows traders to plan appropriately and reduce potential costs associated with storage, with using bottled warehousing, and managing risks associated to the spoilage of perishable goods, which may be detained at customs. And this is a very important provision. When it comes to paperless trade, RCEP makes commitments that apply or work towards applying information technology to support customs processes, clearances, and risk management. So this includes making available and accepting trade and customs documents in electronic format. So this is really moving towards a paperless trading system, which will make it easier for business and reduce costs both for traders and customs agencies. At the moment, we know that a lot of customs administrations really rely on hard copy documentation, on the requirement for wet seals and wet signatures, and really moving towards a paperless trading system or regime is a way to facilitate trade, and RCEP really makes that quite clear within this agreement. When we look at authorised operators, RCEP makes commitments to provide additional trade facilitation measures to authorised operators. This is usually implemented through an authorised economic operator scheme. This type of scheme really allows approved importers, exporters, and traders to benefit from reduced documentation and faster pathways for clearance of their goods. When we look at express consignments, now this is really quite a new provision within FTAs. It's a provision that's made available within the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement and has been brought across to the RCEP agreement, and in fact goes beyond the WTO commitment as well. So with express consignment, RCEP really adopts the measure to expedite clearances of express goods within 6 hours of arrival of those goods at the border. So this includes measures to reduce documentation requirements for express consignments, and it's a very important for the FTA and in particular for Cambodia as electronic commerce becomes more prevalent. With e-commerce comes the need to ship goods via air as rapidly as possible, and having customs agencies and courier companies treating express goods in a similar way really gives traders that confidence that exporting into multiple RCEP importing parties their goods will be treated in a similar way. Their goods will be able to arrive to their customers within a certain time frame. So let's look at implementation procedures. Now, RCEP really recognises that not all members are at the same stage of development in terms of their customs laws and procedures. RCEP allows some members to implement certain commitments within the chapter in an agreed timeframe. So this is stipulated in Annex 4A of the RCEP agreement. And it's called the period of time to implement the commitments. So for Cambodia, this provision is important as it gives Gdce the time to develop its capacity and to ensure that appropriate policy and legal reforms are undertaken to fully implement their RCEP commitments. Now let's look at the specific sort of phasing periods that Cambodia has under the RCEP agreement for customs procedures. So we have pre-arrival processing, release of goods, and application of information technology as 3 examples where Cambodia has been given an appropriate amount of time to develop its policy reform necessary to implement these procedures. So we have pre-arrival processing, which Cambodia has 5 years from entry into force, which basically comes to January 2027. The release of goods, so this is the timeframes that Cambodia has committed to, 48 hours for general goods to be released from customs, 6 hours for express goods, and 6 hours for perishable goods to be released. So these reforms, Cambodia has until January 2027 to implement. As well as paperless trading, which comes under information technology. Cambodia has, again, 5 years to implement those arrangements. And then 3 other areas that Cambodia has, authorised operators, express consignments, and customs cooperation. So with Cambodia's authorised economic operator program, Cambodia has, again, 5 years to implement these arrangements. And of course, Cambodia already has the precursor to its AEO program, and I know are doing some really great work at the moment with fully implementing its requirements, both under the WTO, but also under RCEP. We have express consignments in the timeframe, of course, for 5 years to implement that, and the requirement for customs cooperation, which is the exchange of information between customs agencies within the RCEP region. So Cambodia has also 5 years to really implement those arrangements as well. So when it comes to future-proofing customs procedures in RCEP, we know that the agreement has been negotiated at a certain point of time. It was negotiated for almost a decade. And we know that customs technologies and new customs procedures are developing all the time. And it's important that a free trade agreement, such as RCEP, is able to also improve itself over time and incorporate new standards and new ways of doing things. So RCEP does future-proof itself. It includes a RCEP general review. So the commitment is that the RCEP agreement will be upgraded through a general review 5 years from entry into force. So from January 2027, RCEP member states will come together and consider what is required and if it is required to upgrade the agreement, including all of the chapters, such as the Customs and Trade Facilitation chapter. And then following that, there are ongoing reviews embedded within the agreement to further review RCEP as a whole every 5 years following that first 5 years of the agreement on January 2027.
Robin, you have 2 minutes to conclude. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Yeah. So just finishing up now for the implications for Cambodia. The implications can only really be good for Cambodia, particularly as the global economy is coming out of the pandemic. Post-COVID economic recovery is very important for Cambodia. RCEP provides greater opportunities for Cambodia to traverse the economic challenges experienced over these past 2 to 3 years. RCEP firmly puts ASEAN at the center of RCEP trading region, and having strong customs rules will help Cambodia to increase trade and then remove some of those barriers at the border. Certainly, I see the greatest challenges for Cambodia and Gdce at the moment is to the work that must continue in developing its systems, its procedures, its laws and regulations to really meet those high standards that RCEP has been doing. And I think that RCEP will really increase trade. It will reduce costs for business, particularly for Cambodian importers and exporters. And as I said before, RCEP, Cambodia and Gdce are already doing great things when it comes to implementing RCEP and meeting their commitments. And I'm sure my colleague will, in the next session, will share some of these victories that Gdce are having at the moment. I think over the next 5 years, Cambodia will really benefit greatly from RCEP, and we will really see how RCEP will benefit Cambodia, particularly over the next 5 to 10 years. And I thank everyone for listening to my presentation. I hope I was able to give a very quick overview of the chapter. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them after this session as well. So thank you. I'll pass it back to you, Sven.
Thank you, Robin. That was excellent, especially to hear from someone who has participated in the negotiations. And as you say, the agreement took almost 10 years to come to fruition. So that was very useful to us to have a background information and to see also what, as an Australian diplomat, you expect would happen when the implementation of the agreement is really on the ground and is observed everywhere. And you provided an excellent segue into next presenter, who is Ms. Uk Chan Sopiep, the Chief of Free Trade Office at Gdce, because Ms. Chan Sopiep, I mean, her daily work involves implementing different free trade agreements on behalf of Gdce, including the RCEP agreement. So I guess Mrs. Chan Sopiep will take us through what it means on a daily basis to take this agreement, these 21 provisions that you mentioned, Robin, and put them into practice. So very happy to have you, Ms. Chan Sopiep. The floor is yours.
Yes, very good morning. Respected Excellency, Director, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm pleased to present all of you about the Chapter 4 of the CPTF, Chapter 4 of the RCEP. Before I make the presentation, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Uk Chan Sopiep. You can call me Sopiep. I'm a Chief of the Free Trade Office of the General Department of Customs and Excise of Cambodia, in charge of negotiating the free trade agreement, including RCEP, ASEAN Member, ASEAN Plus, bilateral, and also verifying a certificate of origin. And in addition, I also follow up ASEAN meeting, multilateral and bilateral meeting. This morning, I'm delighted to make a presentation on the custom procedure and trade facilitation chapter at this dialogue. Let me share my presentation on the screen. Do you see my slide?
We can see your slide, but it's not full screen yet. Yeah, now it's okay. Go ahead.
Yes. The order of the presentation today would be highlight briefly the history and introduction of the RCEP and CPTF RCEP, and go on to the explanation of the objective of the CPTF chapter, structure of the chapter, and of course the baseline for the text and the highlight of the CPTF chapter, and the last is the implementation of RCEP. I will give you the brief history and the introduction of the RCEP, how the particular agreement formed out. The RCEP is an agreement to broaden and deepen ASEAN engagement with Australia, China, Japan, Korea, and New Zealand. Actually, at the moment, you also seen from the Robin slide. But in addition, I just would like to brief some additional point that missed out from the Robin slide. This also participating country account about 30% of the global GDP and about 30% of the world population and 32.5% of the world trade volume. These statistics I get from the publication of the Ministry of Commerce. And the objective of the RCEP is to establish the modern, comprehensive, high quality, and mutual beneficial economic partnership that will facilitate the expansion of the regional and investment and contribute to the global economic growth and development. And the RCEP will work alongside and support to the global economic growth and development. And support an open, inclusive, and rule-based multilateral trade system. Moving to the another slide. As you know that the RCEP consists of 20 chapters and include many areas that were not previously covered in the ASEAN and ASEAN Plus 1 FTA. Related to the custom matter, the RCEP has specific provision covering trade in goods, including rule origin, custom procedure, and trade facilitation. Move to the history and introduction of the CPTF chapter. It took us 4 years to actually negotiate the RCEP CPTF chapter. We start at about late 2013 and end at the Bangkok round in 2018, and it took us 21st round to finish the negotiation. It also fitting file not take comprising 21st article with 21st round of the negotiation. You can see me in the final round of the negotiation in this picture. And the chapter covers general principle and specific commitment that ensure predictability, consistency, and transparency in the application of the custom law and regulation of the RCEP country. Move to the objective of the CPTF chapter. We sought the guidance of the leader. So we were tasked to have a modern, comprehensive, high quality, and mutual beneficial to the chapter. We were tasked also to agree a broader and deeper engagement with the significant improvement over the existing ASEAN Plus 1 FTA and also WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. While recognizing the individual and the diverse circumstance of the participating country, we also tasked to include the provision to facilitate trade and enhance transparency in trade relations between the participating country, as well as the provision to facilitate the RCEP country engagement in the global, regional, and supply chain. We come up of the CPTF chapter. As given the time limit for my presentation, I will provide you the link of the website to access the full text of the chapter. And moreover, Robin already mentioned detail of some article. We actually identify the key element of the chapter. We have first the framework of the article called transparency article called article and implementation arrangement. The chapter also cover the commitment of each custom administration. Custom matter is a specialized skill to facilitate legitimate trade. We need to make sure that all parties make use of custom procedure to speed up the custom clearance. Fortunately, we come up with the baseline of the WTO TFA and comparative of the WTO TFA, ASEAN and ASEAN Plus as follow. We learned that the most significant commitment to work forward concrete timeline with respect to the number of custom procedures, such as 90-day in issuance period of advance ruling on tariff classification, rule origin, and custom violation. For this provision, Cambodia is already complied. And 48-hour timeline for the release of the goods from custom and 6-hour timeline for the release perishable goods and express consignment, express shipment from the custom. This provision Cambodia need a time frame. And also procedure for operator to meet a specified criteria for the authorized operator. You can see that Cambodia now having the best trade mechanism. And also there is the binding commitment to apply risk management and to use IT in the procedure cost.
Sorry, Santukip, you're muted now. Dr. Sinavith, you need to switch your mic back on because you have muted the room. Yes. Ms. Chansopiak, can you go ahead?
Okay. In addition, what I mentioned earlier, this chapter also recognize the different level of readiness of a party to implement some of the commitment. A party shall given the period of the time identified as Annex 4 and do you hear me right now? Okay, I continue. This part, Robin also mentioned that I move to the this is the baseline and the highlight that we capture for the Cambodia need the grace period for the article pre-arrival processing, release of the good, and also application of information technology for the AO and also custom cooperation. Move to the implementation of the RCEP. You may know that Gdce have prepared for the implementation of the RCEP, and in January on 26 and 27, Gdce organized the raising awareness workshop on the rural origin and CPTF under the RCEP to the custom officer and also the private sector. We organized the workshop virtually because of the COVID situation. And we also implement the RCEP tariff commitment, and the RCEP tariff commitment is also available at the Gdce website. Actually, the implementation of the RCEP is monitored within the Gdce. You may know that Gdce cover all the chapter 4 CPTF chapter and also the rule of origin chapter. Gdce is the receiving authority who verify the certificate of origin for providing preferential tariff treatment and the FTA to the importer. And Gdce is also the member, the rural origin working group led by the Ministry of Economy and Finance. And ongoing activity supporting Cambodia regional integration. So far, Gdce work closely with the development partner who help provide technical assistance and financial assistance, especially for the category C implementation of the WTO TFA. You can see that ARI Plus Cambodia, Untact, JICA, Contact, and also World Customs Organization. I would like to highlight some progress of the category C implementation of the WTO TFA. It is the commitment of the Cambodia. For the Article 1.4, the notification, you can see that there's the progress update. We currently receive the technical assistance from the EU ARI Plus Cambodia. And pre-arrival clearance procedure. We also received the technical assistance from EU ARI Plus Cambodia and also Contact. We need the action to develop pre-arrival processing system, and my colleague from IT department will explain in detail. And move to the article related to the trade facilitation measure for authorized operator. We currently also receive the technical assistance from the EU ARI Plus Cambodia and also JICA. That we need the action to develop AO guideline and establish a AO strategy, a work plan, and also establish application and accreditation process and AO section, and also develop IT function for AO program, best trader, custom broker, and exclusive importer right. And for the single window, I just only brief that we also receive the technical assistance from ERIA Plus, but just only support for how to assess the phase 1 and the phase 2 of the implementation of the national single window. That's it for my slide presentation. If you have any question, please feel free to ask me. And this is the website that you can download and to learn more about the full text of the CPTF chapter. And the reason why that I don't focus mainly on the rule origin, because this is the dialogue today mentioned mainly on the custom procedure and trade facilitation. So for the rule origin, I already informed you that Gdce is the receiving authority of the certificate of origin, not only under RCEP, but all FTA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sopiet. I guess it's okay for us to share your slide because there's a lot of information. It's very fact-filling presentation. So can you confirm it's okay for us to share the slides with the participants, Ms. Sopiet?
Yes, you can deliver and distribute my slide of presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And your presentation included a number of references to the Cambodian National Single Windows, to the IT application, to the pre-arrival process. And we thought that it would be best covered by the IT department of the Gdce to take us through the latest improvements, what has been happening in the Cambodian National Single Window Phase 2 and Phase 3. And for this, we have Mr. Sopanaret, Noel Sopanaret from the IT department of the Gdce to join us today. Welcome, Mr. Naret. You have the floor. You have roughly maximum 10 and 15 minutes to take us through your presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Sven. Let me share my presentation. Okay. Thank you, Sven. Good morning, everyone. My name is Noel Sopanaret from the IT department of the General Department of the Customs Excise of Cambodia. And first of all, I would like to pay my respects to His Excellency Dr. Sang Sinavith, His Excellency Dr. Soksipanar, and distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. So today presentation, I would like to cover on the Cambodia custom automation, which is not only covered with the national single window, and I would like to cover most of the part of the custom automation that we have been done in the previous year and what we are going to do in the near future. And so this is a little bit information about me, so I don't need to focus on this. You may have my presentation slide, so yes, let me just move on. So today I would like to share some information below the introduction of the custom automation system, the current implementation of the ID system, the ongoing projects, future feasible projects, challenges and lessons that we learn from all this implementation. First is the introduction. Gdce is a leading agency and responsible for enforcing custom regulation, controlling and collecting all kinds of duty and tax on cross-border trade in goods. within this text, it also hiding this information that we hiding the information of the trade facilitation role of the Gdce within this short text also. So Gdce has implemented ASEAN Goods in 2008, and currently we moved to, I think, 99% of the checkpoint, and the trade is within ASEAN Goods already. So all the custom declaration is done electronically. So Gdce has implemented e-customs in 2015 because of the necessity that we don't have the functionality inside ASEAN Goods, so we develop more functionality outside ASEAN Goods, which is integrated, but it is not inside ASEAN Goods. In 2015, it is local developed from the custom automation team. And Gdce has hosted national single window operations in 2019. We don't just host the national single window, we also the implementation party also. And Gdce is connected to ASEAN single windows in 2019. Currently, we exchange the E-Artiga Form D, which is a certificate of origin, and the ASEAN custom declaration document. We have 2 document exchange within ASEAN right now. And Gdce has implemented GTAS, stand for Global Travel Assessment Systems, in 2022 within this year. Actually, we piloted in last year, but this year we launched official line. And next is the improvement to the current system are gradually done. It depends on the situation and the budget. And more new system will be realized because we already developed the ICT strategy, and you can it is available on our website, so you can find it. So more new system has to be realized, and the improvement of the current system is really needed for custom operation. So here are the current implementation of the IT system. So I may not go very detailed, but I can share the slides so you can read more. So we within last year we upgrade the ASEAN Goods systems to version 4.3.3, and within this period we also integrated the risk management system inside ASEAN Goods, which is outside a few years ago. So now we have the integrated risk management inside ASEAN Goods, which is more or less is better for the trade community and the custom. And the second one is the e-custom. As I told you earlier in the introduction, the e-custom is mainly the support services or module, which is not available inside ASEAN Goods. So we in-house develop this module to support the operation of which is not available in ASEAN Goods, and more or less is operational by custom, not for the private sector, but it also support the trade community because this system is fully integrated with ASEAN Goods. So most of the information operate inside e-custom will be shared to ASEAN Goods also. So as you may see here, we have the gateways to exchange the information, electronic data exchange, and here a national transit because we use the international transit within ASTFI, and we also have the e-payment services inside the e-custom, which is already integrated with ASEAN Goods. So the third one is the national single window. So we have a national single window which is implemented by the I think in EV total the agency, because it may be 1 or 2 agencies within each ministry have been participated in national single window. So currently it's around 18 government agencies participated in the national single window, and we also work with the Ministry of Environment to upgrade to onboard this the system of this ministry into national single window. And for the ASEAN single window, Cambodia has already exchanged the certificate of origin of Artiga E Form D, ASEAN Custom Declaration document. So which is, I think not all the members in ASEAN has been live with these features yet. So now we go live with Singapore, Thailand, and I'm not sure, but maybe one other country. Currently, we exchange this information. For example, if we have the export declaration from Cambodia, the system will automatically send these export declarations to the receiving country. For example, you have to import in Thailand. So this information will be shared to Thailand custom so that they can do the risk analysis or maybe the cross-check on their import declaration. So vice versa, we receive the information from Singapore, from Thailand for our risk assessment also. And the number 4, interministerial integration. So we have integrated our system with the FMIS system, which is operated by the Ministry of Economy and Finance and mostly used by the National Treasury. We also integrated our system with a vehicle registration system with the MPWT, Ministry of Post, Public Work and Transport. And we also integrate our system with the General Department of Taxation on the exchange of some trade information and the company registration with the General Department of General Department of Taxation. And next, 5th is the ASEAN Custom Transit. So I think this one, this is for the regional transit system, which is covered among ASEAN. So currently we have a pilot implementation within from Malaysia to Thailand to Cambodia and to Vietnam. So we are, it is already, I think, piloting, and we have the commitment to have a fully launched with this application. And 6, we, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, we have implemented the global travel assessment system to facilitate the passenger and to trigger the high-risk passenger also. So currently we receive the API and PNR information from the airline, and this system has been integrated with CamDX, which stands for Cambodia Data Exchange. And within this system, we have the watch list, we have the risk analysis, link analysis, Elasticsearch, and notifications to the officers, so many more functionality. And the 7 is the custom statistics system. So I think if you go to the websites of the Gdce, you will find the some available statistics available in the website. You may see that this is not very much there, but they take a lot of effort and resource to do that, because we have to actually Gdce adopted the IMTS 2010. So all the recommendation within the IMTS has been adopted. So we take lots of effort and expert to come up with this dissemination on our website, and we also working on to establish more and deeper detail of the information. And number 8 is the NII. It stands for non-intrusive inspection for custom tools. So we have a scanning machine, CCTV, and we also have the exit gate management within Asikuda also. And for the mobile application, Gdce have developed a numbers of mobile applications. So you may find on the iOS and Android App Store and Play Store, which is custom tariff 2017 and 2012, which is a separate app. So some of you may want to see the previous tariff. You can also find on the 2017. And if you want the current one, you can check on the 2022. And we also developed the custom clearance handbook to assist the private sector so that they can learn, because this book has been, we have also the PDF format, and we have the mobile application that you can search fast in this one. In this book, you may find the information easier than the custom regulation because it's simplified wording. So you may find it helpful. And we also have the application for the public to verify the vehicle document For example, like if you may check the vehicle document, whether this car or this vehicle has been imported legally and paid the duty and tax or not, you can check their document within this application for public. And for the internal use, custom also developed the Cambodia custom system to enhance the operation of the custom so that they don't need to hold their PC to the field. So we have the examiner app also. So in this case, when custom do their inspection at the field, they don't need to bring their laptop with them, and they can report the result of the inspection faster so that the officer at the office, they can decide quicker. So this is also one of the faster operation produced by the app. And more or less, we also have the trader app. I think this app has been, I think we are on a process to publicize this application for the trader. So within this app, you have a numbers of operations to check your status of the document applies to Gdce, and you can pay the duty and tax from this app also. So I think a numbers of module inside this trader application also. And yeah, this is the partner bank that we are working with. Some of the bank has been integrated with the national single window, and some other bank has been integrated with the custom system itself. So we have the Canada Bank and ASEAN Bank and Wing Bank are the live operation, and some other bank are working with Gdce for the online payment. Even though they are not working, they don't have the e-payment integrated, but trader also can do the bank transfers to all these banks also. And recently we are working with one of the partner banks to implement the KQR, so that they if the trader they don't have the mentioned bank, so they can pay via KQR. So all the trader they have the facility to pay even if they don't have the bank account with our partner bank. So here is the partner that we connect with the GDS, stand for the Global Distribution System. So we have worked with Amadeus, Cyber, Travel Sky, Navitias, and iPort. These companies are the global distribution system platform. So currently, Custom have been connected to a numbers of airlines already to send their API and PNR to our global travel assessment system. So I don't want to mention all the airline here, so you may check it. So all of them has been connected, and we are working more towards the finalization of the integrated with all the airline operated in Cambodia. So regarding this integrated, we have been integrated the platform Cambodia Data Exchange and a numbers of government agency. We have the Council of Cambodia Council of Development. We have the Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology, and Innovation, Ministry of Health, FMIS System, General Department of Taxation, Ministry of Public Work and Transport, and Ministry of Agriculture, Agriculture and Fishery. So here are all the current connected agency and platform. So for the dialogue partner, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have been integrated with the ASEAN Member State, which is to exchange the certificate of origins and ASEAN Custom Declaration Transit through the ASEAN single window. And so here are the ongoing projects that we are working on. So we have the ASI Hub system, which is a platform to provide the data exchange mechanism between ASICUDA and external standard system. For example, shipping data providing system. Currently, we are working with TradeLens, which is the developed by IBM and owned by the Merz line. And the second project is the Asikuda GPU CDS integration. This one is to facilitate the custom clearance for the client for the postal consignment with pre-arrival information. So as part of the express consignment or e-commerce consignment, postal consignment will be part of the e-commerce and express. And for the express itself will be in the next project. I will show you in the next slide. So
Mr. Nareth, you only have 30 seconds left to conclude.
Okay. So let me move on first. So we have the pre-arrival and pre-departure baseline assessment. We are working on that. So we are in the process of preparation of the national single window phase 3 and statistics and data warehousing. So we are working on those parts. And we have the exchange electronic information. We are working to exchange the electronic document within ASEAN, more document with ASEAN. And we are working with we are discussing with the dialogue partner to integrate ASEAN with other dialogue partner with Australia, the US, and ASEAN Plus member. So the future feasibility project, we have a pre-arrival and pre-departure system. We have to invest more resources in this one, and express consignment, national single window phase 3, AL and MRI application, cargo tracking system, digital signature, big data and AI, and recognition of e-cell certified certificate of origin. And hopefully, I think the challenge, maybe you may have time for your reading and lesson learned from this thing. Maybe thanks, Seven. I would like to end my presentation here. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Nareth. Sorry to rush you, but I see that there are some questions being asked, and our private sector also would like to say a few words as part of the dialogue. So thank you very much. I think I was personally not aware of all these improvements and all these initiatives that have been spearheaded and led by Gdce. So congratulations on those. I'm sure there will be questions and comments from the private sector on the applicability, on the usability of all these tools, and whether it is easy to get access to this information if you're a trader in Cambodia. And for this, we have a few private sector representatives in our next panel. So before I move to the next panel, I'd like to thank Robin and Supiep and Nareth for these very broad introductions, but also very detailed. We've learned a lot, and now we're going to hear from the private sector if they agree with all these, whether it's applicable, whether we can use this, and what's left to be done for traders to actually make a good use of all these instruments and tools that you have mentioned. So please stay with us, Rubin, Ms. Supiep, and Nareth, when we move to the session 2 of this panel. Thank you. The session 2, as you all know, is going to give a chance to our private sector participants to explain what they are doing based on the information that we have used to get ready to benefit from the content provision of the chapter on custom procedures and trade facilitation of the RCEP. And for this, we have 3 representatives of the private sector, both from Cambodia and from the region. And as well, I hope, Dr. Sinavith, you will also be able to take a few questions or give your view and your reflections at the end of these panel sessions. So in this panel, I have Oknia Kutpeng, who is the Executive Director of, here I think there is a slide with like a Triumph Logistics and the co-chair of the Customs Private Partnership on Mechanism Technical Working Group number 3. We have Mr. Prayak Chandrika, from DHL Express Cambodia, who's the country manager, and we have Sebastian Cortes Sanchez, the deputy director of the Asian Trade Center. And the way we're going to proceed in this panel is I have a few questions for each of you based on your current work, your current mandate in different working groups, so that we understand whether Cambodia's customs and trade facilitation context and framework is fit for purpose for the implementation of the RCEP chapter on custom procedures and trade facilitations. And I'd like to start with you, Mr. Kutpeng. I've just mentioned that you are the co-chair of the Customs private partnership mechanism technical working group number 3. It might be something new for most of our participants. So the first question to you would be, can you tell us more about the role of this technical working group number 3? What have been the discussion that you are having as private sector with the government, and I guess in particular with Gdce on custom procedures? And what do you think could be done in addition to what we've heard to improve customs clearance in Cambodia, both for import and export? So you have roughly 10 minutes to answer these 3 questions. And thank you for joining us, Mr. Kutpei. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sven, and very good morning to everyone, all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to give a little bit background of history about the Government Private Sector Forum that established in 2000 with the IFC as representative of the private sector by that time, and our Royal Government of Cambodia under the leadership of Samdech Techo Hun Sen, the Prime Minister of Cambodia, as the public sector. The first meeting was held in 1999 on 19 December. And following up on that, in 2008, IFC was handed over the private sector coordination to Cambodia Chamber of Commerce at the 13th Government Private Sector Forum on 23 April 2008. By then, established of a total working group of 13 working groups have been formed. As part of the technical working group, custom private partnership mechanism has been established by the broadcast of the Ministry of Economic and Finance on 9 October 2009 and co-chaired by His Excellency Kun Nhâm, the Director General of Gdce, and co-chaired by Neong Nha Ket Mei, President of Cambodia Chamber of Commerce, which a total of 4 technical working groups under this custom private partnership mechanism have been formed, namely Technical Working Group 1, the Custom Garment Export Processing, co-chaired by Mr. Phai Veng, the Deputy Director General of Gdce, and Ong Nha Sinjanthi, President of Cambodia Logistics Association. On Technical Working Group 2, Custom Non-Garment Export Processing, which is co-chaired by Mr. Phai Veng also, and Dr. Tan Mani Van, the Vice President of Cambodia Chamber of Commerce. Technical Working Group 4, Custom SME, co-chaired by Mr. Sai Sakwan, the Deputy Director General of Gdce, and Ong Nha Sokpisat, Vice President of Cambodia Chamber of Commerce. While the Technical Working Group 3, Custom Domestic Market Consumption, which is co-chaired by Mr. Sai Sakwan and myself as Vice President of Cambodia Chamber of Commerce. This Technical Working Group 3 is focusing on the dialogue of importation of local goods and import goods consumption in Cambodia. So for this Technical Working Group, we are focusing on dialogue between private sector and the public sector, especially with custom, in order to do the trade facilitation. So far, we have a lot of dialogue meeting under the private sector and as well as partnership with the custom and private sector coordination working group. And following up to your second question, what has been the recent discussion with the government? We have discussed a lot of points, which is namely to improve the best trader, expansion the number of best trader in Cambodia, which we believe that there are a lot of companies very good in compliance and they are very good in partnership of a private sector and public sector that they want to improve in their compliance of import and export. So best trader. So best trader is very good in dialogue between this custom facilitation and custom have provided very good facilitation for best trader category. for all importers and
Mr.
exporters.
Nofsan, can you
On the
please
other hand,
switch
we
your
have
microphone?
Custom
បាទដូច្នេះអតិថិជន
public service, including tariff that we have discussed, also the pre-arrival clearance processing that we need to process on this to be automation in the system, which we are still under processing with the custom on discussing on how to improve for this further. As well, on the e-payment, we need to expand for more bankers with online e-payment services capability, because the e-payment for nowadays, especially during the pandemic, we also depending on the e-payment in order to make the payment for the importation of duty and tax. Without the e-payment, we were stuck in our processing of the importation and payment of duty and tax. As well, we have been discussed on affiliation and approval of the best trader company for its subsidiary company as well. And on the AO, as mentioned by Gdce, we are working on this very hard in order to improve AO to expand into logistic company, into custom broker company, and supply chain management, because we believe that with the AEO facilitation and accreditation, it would facilitate better trade facilitation and processing of the custom clearance. And on the other hand, my recommendation in order to improve the custom clearance and processing, and in order to catch up with the facilitation of the RCEP, there are still room to improvement, not only for custom, but also private sector. We need to improve on our human resource capability. As well, we need to improve on the facilitation of the digitalization, including the ASICODA system and ARISE Plus, as mentioned by Gdce, which under the support of Antec and ARISE Plus, single window is very important for our operational in order to process for the custom facilitation. I believe that the automation approval in this automation process is very important. For example, like when we have the shipment to US, we need to file AMS. When we have shipment to Japan, we need to file AFR. All those mechanisms that we use for the export can be implemented by importation also. When we included those information document into the custom system, I believe the approval process could be faster. So we would like to propose for the better facilitation on the process of approval, especially in the import approval, the pricings of the duty and tax, and as well on the process of approval of the goods. So the recommendation for those regular importers with the same commodity that they are importing, the process should be automation. And then we have the custom post audit, which we can do later on with the company to ensure the compliance and transparency of those companies that are importing into Cambodia. And on the other hand, the Hague Code harmonization in the region and in the ASEAN country should be the same harmonization, which is very important. Otherwise, when we have different Hague Code, when we have different understanding and translation of the Hague Code, it will be very challenging for the automation approval, challenging for the custom clearance and custom approval as well. So all those are my simple recommendation on this trade facilitation. And thank you very much. I would like to welcome if any question. Thank you. Over to you, Sven.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Peng. This is very useful. Just one quick question to you. You've mentioned the composition of the different working group. Any company, any traders in Cambodia can join the working groups, can participate in discussion, or is it limited to the co-chair, as you've mentioned them?
Yes, very good question. For the dialogue of the working group, we have two different kind of meeting. One of the meeting is for the private sector only, which the private sector co-chair will organize the meeting for private sector. Then every company could participate in order to give the challenges and recommendation on the process. As long as our experience, a lot of meeting under private working group is not part of the technical issue, but it is the issue of understanding of the custom procedures and importation. So when we see those challenges that private sector have been facing, we can advise them on what is the right procedure and what is the challenge of the custom to implement that. So a lot of issues have been settled privately at the private working group. So those issue that we consider as the overall private issue that we need to dialogue with custom, we will bring that to dialogue with the custom of private work, the custom technical working group, which we have our group of private sector to join those meetings with the customs. And we will bring those issues and recommendations to dialogue with the customs. So these are our working mechanism on this. Thank you, Sven.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was looking at my colleague from GDC. They were taking notes of all your recommendations. So hopefully Dr. Sinavith will provide on-the-spot responses to some of your points. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Kutpeng. And with this, I would like to invite Mr. Prayak Chitraka from DHL Express. And Chitraka has been in Cambodia for a very long time, for more than 2 decades. So he has been able to observe the evolutions of Cambodia's participation in free trade agreement, but also the improvement at the customs, hopefully, and at the airports. So thank you for joining us, Chitraka. It's not your first time you're joining us, so we're happy to have you all the time. I have several questions to you regarding express cargo in particular, because this is what you're focusing on. The first question is, have all these improvements that Mr. Naret mentioned in his presentation been also visible for your sector, for the express cargo, express consignment, or is it only relevant for like the usual trade in goods? My first question to you. Same question then to Mr. Kutpeng, like what more could be done? What more could be done to improve customs clearance for traditional goods, but also for express cargo? And my third question is, we know that DHL is a global company, is a truly global company, but how do you prepare yourself in Cambodia when Cambodia signed a new free trade agreement? How do you prepare your rules, your procedures to make sure that you are compliant, and you are also a kind of like a leader or an early bird in adoption of this, so that other companies can follow later on? So 3 questions to you, Chitraka. You have also 10 minutes, and over to you.
Thank you, Sven. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having me here today. And I would like to thank the earlier presenter from GDCE and the Australian Embassy. It was very interesting to hear so much development from GDCE, and as Sven mentioned, as a private sector, we are not fully aware of all those developments and plans. So it was really good to see all those development happening. Now, in order to answer your question, Sven, first of all, thank you very much for the questions. Now, how the improvement in custom clearance? Now, the question is, my answer is the improvement for the express cargo. The good answer is yes and no. The procedure for the documents and de minimis category for the low valuable dutiable shipments help us to expedite the custom clearance process. However, for other categories, we still have to follow the same procedures and use the same system as general cargo or sea freight. We know that the government took several actions to improve the cross-border procedures, like restructure of camp control, removal of CAMSAB, cost reduction of container scanning, etc. Unfortunately, we do not see much advantage from this initiative. We are in a small package and time-sensitive business, so the treatment given to us is the same, and the procedure and system as a heavyweight containerized cargo. However, we are very happy to hear that new provision on express consignment is in pipeline in Rcep. So we hope this to be implemented soon. And I saw that Robin was saying for the 5 years, I hope like it will not take next 5 years to implement, because companies like us, we are ready to go with it, right? Now, what more could be done? From our part, we always work closely with relevant government agencies, especially with the Customs Department through CCC, where Mr. Putpeng just mentioned earlier, we are part of it. We work with Eurochamp to request for support, which at the end of the day will be beneficial for the end users, who are our customers, right? For instance, we put in some of our suggestions in Eurochamp's white book, which was published in 2019, which centered on the simplified clearance procedure for the small or express packages. That does not only make life easy for the customers or express operator like us, but it will also be greatly beneficial to the SME sector, which the government is really trying to support. Getting operators getting operators is one of the key focus that the government should be looking at it now, like to allow access to the SME to the international markets, right? This is what the government is focusing on. From our side, we really want to improve our service quality, speed, convenience, and the cost. And this will happen if we have support from the regulatory body to modernize, digitalize the process and system. Technology is moving fast, and I hope we can adopt and utilize these technologies. And I saw like the Gdce presentation from the IT part, like we are doing so many things. My recommendation is for us as a private sector to have information on time, so that like we can utilize those technology. Now, your last question, Sven, in terms of how companies like DHL is preparing for the RCEP or the FTAs, right? We already invest a lot in our infrastructure and in our people, training and creating more jobs over the past 2 years, despite the pandemic, because even though like people were not able to travel, the goods had to travel. So we have been keep on investing a lot, and we are ready to work with the government agencies to support from our part. We are already, we believe that like a backbone to support Cambodian SME success, right? If customers are successful, we'll be successful as well. And we want the trust from the government to the private sector in future development of the Cambodia, and this will help us to create more jobs for the people of Cambodia, and it will encourage us to invest more. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Prakat. Do you mean that you, as a country manager in Cambodia, you have to keep abreast of all these changes that are happening in Cambodia? It's not managed by somebody in Singapore that will inform you, like those are the rules and regulations for Cambodia. So you have to make sure that you are always on top of regulations, procedures, innovations, and then inform your customers. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
We do try to get ample information in the country, as well as like we are engaging our regional office, not only regional office, global office as well. And as a part of it, like our global office is directly working with Arise Plus Cambodia with GIZ, and we are not engaged from locally, but also from regional and global side as well.
Right. Thank you. This is a very good transition to broadening the scope of our discussion right now in the panel to what's happening in other countries in the region. So for this, we have Sebastian Cortes Sanchez from the Asia Trend Center. Thank you, Chitrakar, for your answer. So Sebastian, you will be the voice of the region in that panel. You have learned what's happening in Cambodia, what are the challenges faced by the private sector in Cambodia. The Asia Trend Center is a bit of a beacon for a lot of SMEs in the region, also for governments, when it comes to implementation of free trade agreements. So you have access, you have outreach to many different SMEs. So my first question to you is how do you see SMEs in ASEAN countries, in ASEAN member states, preparing for RCEP, but in particular for the implementation of this custom procedure agreement? Is there enough information out there for SMEs to be ready? Is there training, manuals, etc.? My first question to you. Second question to you is, what are the challenges that these companies still face outside Cambodia, in other member states, in really availing of the benefits offered by the agreements? And maybe share with you a few best practices or lessons learned that could be applicable to Cambodia based on what you've heard just before. So over to you, Sebastian. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Sven, and thank you to ERIA and the Gdce for kindly inviting me to speak at today's event on implementation of RCEP. Like Sven mentioned just now, we are the Asian Trade Center, are experts on RCEP and trade agreement and work across government, business, aid, research in their assessment and implementation. And particularly, and of interest to this webinar, we assist companies from across the region, especially MSMEs, and also logistics service providers, to one, understand the benefits of those agreements, especially in their relationship to their bottom line, so the profit margin, the landed cost, things that they understand. And then two, working with them to figure out ways to adjust their internal processes, their staffing, their human resourcing, so that they can take advantage of those agreements in the most cost-efficient possible way, because MSMEs have very little resources. And to address the two questions that you've asked me to Sven, I think I just wanted to, one, provide a grounded understanding of how do SMEs prepare to take advantage of those benefits? What does that SME do to take advantage of those benefits? And especially given the resource and knowledge constraints that SMEs often have. And then two, what are some of the gaps and ongoing challenges? And ways in which RCEP implementation and further work on customs like the one done by Cambodia can be done to address those challenges. So thinking about how do SMEs prepare for those challenges, the best way in which we like to think and in which we like to advise SMEs to think about preparing for a trade agreement is to understand how the potential implementation of agreement impacts their bottom line. So what does that mean? It means their profit margin, their logistics or supply chain costs, their landed cost in case they're exporters. And because those are all costs that ultimately impact the competitiveness of the product in a given market, whether it's Cambodia, whether it's Japan, whether it's China. So once you get them to understand how does this actually impact my own costs, I'm going to pay attention and willing to dedicate resources to that. So once we establish that, there's two types of questions that we often ask SMEs to answer. The first one is to think about RCEP opportunities in a way that lowers my cost across 15 markets, right? So you're thinking not just about, how do I decrease my cost in one single market, but how does this make my operation across my entire regional supply chain more efficient or lowers my cost? And then second, if that is the case, then what do I need to do as a company? Like, where do I go? What do I do? Do I train my staff? Do I need to upend my system? Do I have to fire someone? What happens? So the first question is to think about RCEP opportunities in a way that, one, the agreement already complements, and I think as already all the panelists have mentioned, in a way that it changes the existing status quo. So I think as was highlighted at the beginning, RCEP is not the first agreement Cambodia signs and that other countries in the region sign. So it already becomes part of other things that have been implemented. And it also comes into place at a time where not just Cambodia, but customs organizations across the region are modernizing their processes. They're digitalizing it, improving coordination between customs, statistics, and trade agencies, and doing a lot of other efforts. So when thinking about it within that context, I think, and I'm very thankful that panelists in the earlier session mentioned, what are some of the things that could potentially improve across? And I don't want to sort of rehash, but things like pre-arrival processing, like timeline for customs clearance, like my previous panelists say, the treatment of low-value shipments, which really matters, especially for SMEs who use services like DHL, are all those things that could be implemented. And the way to get SMEs to think, and the way, if there are any SMEs in the call, to think about why does this matter to me, is because of two reasons. Like Sven said, is the regional scope, right? Most of the medium businesses that I work with, they just do not operate in one country. They often source out of China, or they source out of ASEAN. They have manufacturing facility, probably maybe between Malaysia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Cambodia. And then they have a regional distribution hub out of Singapore that perhaps distributes to Japan and Australia. So the operations of a lot of these companies are regional in nature. An agreement like RCEP would allow you to strengthen the efficiency of your own systems and your cost across that region. And if there is anything that, if effectively implemented, does that, you need to be paying attention as a company. Otherwise, you might be losing in a lot of price gaining. And then second, and I think something that was mentioned a lot at the beginning, is that the agreement is deeper. When we say deeper, what does it mean? It just has more and better binding commitments that actually reflect the needs of companies. So I think a clear example from what was said is the release of goods within 48 hours, right? Before this, there was agreements in place like the ASEAN Trading Goods Agreement or the ASEAN Plus One agreements that said, release the goods in a timely manner. Agreements like RCEP now saying, well, you have to release it within 48 hours, or if it's perishable, within 6 hours. Now there is a impetus for governments to actually implement this and have it in place across the 50 markets. So I think given the regional scope and given some of the very tangible benefits, this is something that companies need to pay attention to. And then establishing that there is benefits, then, okay, then what do companies do? Are there resources out there sufficient to sort of address those needs? I think I wanted to highlight two types of benefits that have already been highlighted earlier on that actually directly related to the bottom line and that do not come automatically with RCEP implementation. So a lot of the time company thinks, oh, there's this agreement in place. That's great. I'm taking advantage of it. What often surprises me when I talk to a lot of companies, even multinationals, with multi-billion-dollar revenues, is that they actually don't use trade agreements. And if they use trade agreements, they're not aware of things like trade facilitation and customs benefits. So there's two examples that I think are very relevant. And I think the implementation of RCEP creates an impetus for companies to start doing these things if they were not already doing so. So the first one is advanced rulings. It allows you as a company to get an advanced ruling on customs valuation, which determines the taxes and your landed cost, an advanced ruling on the tariff classification, which previous panel already highlighted is a key issue and actually determines what is your landed cost and also then the tariff that you get charged, the import tariff, and then the origin of goods, right? You might, your good might be manufactured in China, but it had to be transshipped through Indonesia into Cambodia. And then the customs person doesn't believe you. They say, no, I think this is from Cambodia. There's a Cambodia thing here. It's not from China. So you cannot apply for FTA benefits. So getting that in advance actually increase your competitiveness. And if you're doing that and your competitors are not doing that, you're actually losing that competitiveness. So I think when you look at things like advanced rulings or like the authorized economic operator scheme, those are types of measures and mechanisms that if not in place as a company, you need to have in place. So how does that relate to what are some of the common challenges, and the availability to and access to information? I think the two previous panelists already highlighted a lot of those. I think one that I think has already been highlighted is, of course, the speed of customs clearance and efficiency for customs timelines. I feel like 90% of the job for a lot of the logistics providers that we work with is calling customs, figuring out what's happened to the shipment and why hasn't it been cleared. The other one, of course, is inconsistency across countries. So that means the way things get classified is just different. The way things get classified in the same port 2 different times, oftentimes it's different. So it gets classified one way in January, and then in July it gets classified later, and it just so happens to be a higher duty. And then the last one is in digitization, there is differences in implementation. So for example, a country might say, we're now issuing digital SPS certificates. That's great. I don't have to get a physical one. But then at imports, the customs only accept physical copies. And this happened to a couple of companies that I work with during the pandemic. So there's those types of inconsistencies, and the implementation of RCEP can enable that. Then the question is, what can you do? And I think once you focus on MSMEs, it becomes a problem, because these are often companies making between $1 to $800, $900 million in revenue a year, which is a big gap, but that oftentimes just don't have the staff, their resources, or the knowledge to even take advantage of tariff benefits. They just do not. And they don't have any systems in place to be able to do that. Most of the companies that I work with are either still using Excel spreadsheets to manage trade and manage customs. And there's a lack of a gap in capacity from the company, and also from a lot of the logistics service providers who are not equipped to provide those services. So if the company doesn't ask for it, then the LSP doesn't do it. And then there's this cycle where they are already taking advantage of something like the TIGA, the ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement, which are very common, and they issue the certificate, and they have no systems or capacity in place to be able to move into something like RCEP. So then the question, what can be done? I think what can be done, and I think it's governance, as governments, given that there's a lot of government stakeholders here today, I think is one, leverage SME experiences to implement the agreements. I think it's refreshing to hear that there's a lot of public-private dialogue already happening within Cambodia. But I think often a lot of these initiatives do not, get those inputs directly from the companies that trade. And I think if governments more often engage, companies like DHL or some of its actual customers and understand where are the delays, is this actually being implemented 5 years, 6 years, and not just in Cambodia, but across the region, you can actually get a better understanding whether something's implemented and what are the gaps for implementation. And I think two, ensuring that SMEs actually participate in FTA implementation. Like I said, often they do not have the resources to think or pay attention to these things. So really developing procedures and requirements that work within their current resource constraints. So thinking about SMEs as, I have no resources to do anything else unless it will lower my landed cost by 10% by next month, right? And thinking, if I'm asking for feedback, if I'm putting in place this procedure or testing this app, is this something that I can show has an actual material benefit, in 6 months, so that that logistics person can go to their to their CFO or CEO and say, hey, look, if we do this in 6 months, we could say at 10%. If you don't show them that, you're not going to get the willingness and engagement and participation. And if you're a company, large or small or logistics service provider, I think it's just important to ask yourself, am I using FTAs or not? Often the case, you go down to the person, managing the paperwork and import, and the answer is no. And if I'm not using them, which ones am I using it? Does RCEP offer me something that existing agreements don't offer me? And key for customs and trade facilitation, am I taking advantage of these readily available schemes and measures like authorized economic operator and advanced ruling that would actually much easier and much cheaper for me to operate across markets? And I think if there's sort of this, just to conclude, since my 10 minutes are up, if there is a more coordinated effort from governments to really engage and understand some of the key challenges and provide MSMEs with materials that meet them where their needs are, and if there is a more active work like the one I know DHL is doing and logistics effort providers are doing across the region to try to build the skills of MSMEs to ask themselves those questions, and start that journey to figure out where the benefits are and what are some of the best ways for them to take advantage of those benefits. I think that the implementation of RCEP can be effectively done across the region. And yeah, and that I conclude that with remarks. Thank you, Sven.
Thank you, Sebastian. It's a lot of information. I hope Dr. Sipana had a chance to write down everything that was said. I saw him frantically writing on his notes. Well, this reminds me of something, Sebastian, something that I saw in Australia, and I hope Robin, who is still here with us, can maybe shed some light on this. Robin, there is something called the FTA portal that was developed, I think, by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australia to inform SMEs of the different opportunities that they may have with their product in different free trade agreements. Could you say a few words about, the rationale for this and how it's been used in Australia?
Yeah, thanks, Sven. Yes, you're right. So I might just see if I can share this website. So Australia does have what's called the Free Trade Agreement portal, and actually several countries around the world do have similar types of portals in place. And this type of portal really is an initiative of the Australian government to help Australian businesses, exporters and importers, to navigate the very complex field of multiple FTAs that Australia has. And Australia has 16 free trade agreements in force at the moment. And basically this portal brings all of those 16 free trade agreements and all of the rules, all of the tariffs, all of the requirements, including documentation, into one single portal for traders to be able to understand how their goods will be treated when they export. So for example, if you look at bicycles, so we know that Cambodia exports and produces a lot of bicycles. We type that into the search function here. We import that into Australia from Cambodia and we click search. We can see that there's actually 2 agreements that fall under that Cambodian exporters and Australian importers can actually benefit from, RCEP or ASEAN. So you can click on either. Then if you know the HS code, the harmonized system code, or you know what product category you're exporting, so it's bicycles in this instance, you can click on that and you can see the 6 to 8 digit HS code. You click on that and then it gives you the detailed information on what the benefit is. So under RCEP, you've got a 0% tariff, so it comes in duty-free into Australia from Cambodia. If you didn't use RCEP, it would be most favored nation rate of 5%. So if you didn't use RCEP, you'd be paying 5% tariff. So you can see that under RCEP, actually from entry into force, it's 0% all the way. And then you can look at the origin requirements. So there's a step-by-step guide, questions about how to determine whether your good is originating. So you go through those steps. And then you can click on documentation and actually see the types of documentation that is required. So for a certificate of origin, you can get one through these Australian companies. You can use a declaration of origin under RCEP as well. So it's really a one-stop shop for traders to understand how to import or export their product. And this is something that, countries like Cambodia, can really benefit from developing themselves as well, as Cambodia are going through a system of negotiating several new free trade agreements at the moment and implementing, a couple of new bilateral free trade agreements as well. So I'll pass it back to you, Sven, but that's just a very quick overview of Australia's system.
Thank you, Robin. It's a very useful tool. We will also we'll share the link in our report to all participants so they can access it. And hopefully the Ministry of Commerce or Gdce can learn and have something similar so that all businesses can have a one-stop shop on information on RCEP, but also on other free trade agreements Cambodia is participating in. So the last speaker in our panel discussion is actually more a discussant or respondent to what we've just heard from the private sector, from Mr. Kuchbeng, from Chitrakar, and from Sebastian. So Dr. Sang Sinavith, I know you were not supposed to be part of this panel, so I'm not sure you were able to prepare responses to all the good points that were mentioned by our panelists, but I would like to hear from you on what you've just heard in terms of suggestions, recommendations, of ways to improve customs clearance, way to improve documentation and information on what's possible to do, what's feasible, what's available for traders. So Dr. Sinavith, I give the floor back to you for a few reflections, a few thoughts on what you've just heard from our panelists. Thank you, Sinavith.
Thank you very much, Sven, for giving the floor to me. I would like to respond to my colleagues. I can say that the first one to the Omnya Kuchbeng and the the second one, Mr. Prayat, and the last one is Sebastian about their recommendation and comments or the provide the information to this important meeting. Actually, I would like to say thank you very much to the Unya Food Pay. They raised about the good cooperation between the Gdce and the private sector that we have for working group. The first one, custom and the garment export, and the second one about custom non-garment export, something like that, and custom private sector on about the domestic import export for the home use, something like that. And also the thank for the talking about the e-payment, about the EO program, bus rate, and regarding about the bus rate, I would like to inform Unya in the meeting that we plan to have we would like to welcome how to say from the logistic company, forwarders, custom brokers to join the board for the bus rider in the near future. And also the recommendation from the Unya Quick Pay about digitization that for us, we got the assistance from the RIPE Plus through the EU, Germany, through the RIPE Plus Cambodia, and the secret system, also the single window that we plan to upgrade from the, now we are at the current stage is the phase 2, and we plan to move to the phase 3, and we do hope, like my colleagues, Mr. Noise Pandit, we wish to have more OGAs to join this, how to say, Cambodian national single window. And we do hope that in the phase 3, we will have the Ministry of Environment join us. And also regarding about the ASEAN ATN, I can say that usually most of the ASEAN countries, we use the same, how to say, ATN. Now we use the 2022. And Cambodia is one of the country among the 10 ASEAN countries. Cambodia and Thailand start to use this from the January of this year. And this is the overview from the comments recommendation from Unya Quick Pay, and for the mechanism of the to have the private sector and the forwarders, custom broker, importer, exporter. We have not only the custom private sector partnership mechanism, we have the JBA, the Japanese Business Association in Cambodia. Then through this mechanism, Japanese Business Association can raise their concern, their matters, come to custom to solve any issue that raised by them. And also for the forwarders, we have the CLA, in short, the Custom and Logistic Association in Cambodia, that we try to solve the matters that raised by the forwarders. Like in the past time, we got the try to solve the matter from the forwarders regarding about the custom transit. And also in the ASEAN DG meeting last month in Singapore, head of the ASEAN DG Custom encourage the private sector forwarders, traders to use the ACTS, ASEAN Custom in Transit. Actually, for this system, only the mainly in the ASEAN country, only the some traders, they use the how to say, the ACTS from Malaysia to Thailand, but via to Cambodia, but via Thailand. And also sometimes they export goods from Thailand to Vietnam via Cambodia. And also we have another mechanism as well, the development partners mechanism. And also we have UNCTF National Committee on Trade Facilitation in order to implement our how to say, category C, change from C to A, that we got the donor from the EU, Germany, RIPE Plus Cambodia, from JICA, from Swiss Contact Global Alliance, and from the Swiss Contact, and also as I mentioned in my opening remarks, from the IMF for the custom law review. And also we got from the UNTAD for the other matters related to the customs. And to Mr. Praya Chitraka from the head of the HL Cambodia, I also would like to say thank you very much to his comment and recommendation about the how to say the successful of the traders and the import-export in Cambodia. Trade facilitation is not only about the custom matter. We have to together between the join hand in hand together between private sector and custom. We move forward together. And actually, regarding the custom low value, I can say that Gdce is we can say sometimes we are ready to join this to implement the custom low value. However, among the ASEAN countries, still some member states still need time to review their law and regulations. Let me pick up about the Indonesia. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the small package by air from the overseas to Indonesia increased 1,000 times. So then it played important role for the Indonesia national revenue collection by the custom. And then the threshold of the custom low value in Indonesia, just around $3 US. But Cambodia, how to say, $50 US for the express consignment. Yes, I can say in short, the minis. And also with this, we are not, how to say, wait and see how to say, to improve our innovation. But at the same time, we have as I mentioned, the development partners to help us, and together with our human resource and the IT people here, we try our best to put the pre-arrival processing and digitization and infrastructure for the express consignment. And last, I don't want to take my time more. Last, but regarding to Mr. Sebastian about the SME in ASEAN state with the in RCEP about the custom procedure and challenge. Sometimes I can say that custom is really, I can say the most of the custom authority, even though some part we still need more times to how to say, to upgrade our system or our matters that regarding to the custom. But like for the General Department of Custom Excise Cambodia, we introduced the SME, how to say, package to promote incentives to promote the SMEs in Cambodia. And not only from the custom side, but also from the General Department of Taxation, also the promote SME. So we have one broadcast to help the small, medium size in order to, how to say, can export our products to the overseas. And however, their challenge for the SME, very simple one. The custom authority, the line industry, the OGAs that involved with trade facilitation, we try our best. We try to, how to say, to provide the IT solution, IT system in order to catch up with the, how to say, the export country, like let's say China, US, EU, those countries, they use IT system. And we try our best to upgrade our system to reach some international best practice. However, the challenges for the SME is that in their companies, they short of the IT people, they short of the, how to say, the good bookkeeping records, so on and so forth, something like that. That is their challenging in the, how to say, for the SME. Thank you very much. I would like to give back the floor to the Mr. Sven, and if you have any the meetings or have any further questions, we are happy to answer the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sinavith. And I must say that it's always a pleasure to work with your department, because the International Customs Cooperation Department always has open door policy. So it's always easy to access the official in the department to get to know where GDC is in terms of implementation of all these commitments it's made in under different fora. So thank you very much, Dr. Sinavith, as well as your team in the department, as well as GDC. This, I guess, conclude our session 2 panel discussions, very rich. So thank you for all our panelists, Nyakut Peng and Raya Chitrakar and Sebastian Cortez Sanchez for joining us and for sharing your candid views on the challenges also faced by SMEs. And with this, I'd like to move to the last part of our event, session 3, which is always a time for reflections, summarizing what we've learned and have a few takeaways for our panelists and our participants. And we have had the immense honor to count on the support of Dr. Excellency Soksipana for all these dialogues, from the first one on e-commerce. So thank you, Dr. Soksipana for joining us again today to share with us a bit of the lessons we've learned today from this dialogue, but also more generally on your observations. You are a keen observer, advisor to different bodies on how to take advantage of all these agreements. You've written a number of articles in Cambodian newspaper that have been very useful to broaden the understanding, the awareness of businesses, but also of citizens on what Cambodia had reached in the negotiations. So thank you for joining us again. And my personal félicitations, Monsieur le Docteur en droit, for your PhD, equivalent to PhD in French. So we are very happy to hear that you will bring this knowledge also for the larger masses in Cambodia. Hopefully you can translate your thesis in French, from French to English and to Khmer as well. So thank you, Dr. Sipana, for joining us. What have we learned today? What more could be done in terms of dialogue between the public and the private sector so that RCEP is really and implemented in Cambodia and elsewhere, of course? And what more could we do at our level, development partners, government of Australia, ERIA, to continue this dialogue and make sure that it reaches people who actually need it, meaning the traders? So over to you, Dr. Sipana. Thank you again for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Sven. I think you're too kind to me. I think you put a lot of pressure on me, a lot of expectation. But I want to say that at the end of the day, it all boils down to what Sebastian have nicely sort of like sum up, that it's all about the bottom line. It's all about how this whole agreement, free trade, mega free trade, regional free trade, whatever it is, in this case is RCEP, is all how it will boils down to the life of the trader. It's all boils down to how much does it cost me, how much does it save me, and how much can I save from the use of this trade preference. And I want to say that, you know, the Robin, right? Yes, Robin, you know, so showing the last slide on how the Australian government is putting together this portal. I think ultimately this is some good model that, of course, you know, I mean, look, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, we have to make the wheel smoother, you know, but this is the same thing, is that, you know, Cambodian, the Gdce could actually emulate what the Australian is doing, has been doing, and how we can also simulate similar approach to improve the understanding of this agreement. But let me just say foremost that I am so pleased, so excited, so I would say impressed with the improvement that the Gdce have done in the last, well, I have to say is the last 20 years. going back to the days of WTO negotiation with Dr. Kunyim, everything. Listening to Sophia and Sophia, right? Listening to Sophia and to the young IT specialists, I must say they have come a long way. In the IT sphere, it's really skipping the learning curve. They really made a big difference. Of course, I'm not an IT guy, but just listening to the amount of work they have done, I think if only the private sector can just get 20 or 30% understanding of that, it will be a major improvement. But at the end of the day, the work of the government are very separate than the need of the private sector, in the sense that for the government, we have to look at holistically the whole, how it impacts the whole society, the whole economy, that sort of thing. While, for the private sector, they only focus on their area of need. And I could take, in this case, a big company like DHL, while DHL is only focused more on a small package, right? So in that sense, their need is very focused. The issue with SME is the same thing. Dr. Sinavith have rightly mentioned that, despite the work that the custom department is working to improve, to help them, it is more their own issue, their own lack of capacity, lack of resource, lack of IT specialists to enable them to take advantage of it. So to me, the gap that need to fill, it's more, how do we reconcile the work at the national level, which in this case, the Gdce is doing what it's supposed to do at the national level, and how do we bring in the smaller trader, in this case, SME, how do we help them, catch up the area? But again, when I say catch up, they don't need to catch up everything. They just need to meet the minimum requirement to take advantage of this market access, which is offered under the RCEP. In this case, if they want to export to Australia, to Japan, whatever, on their particular product, how can we work with them to bring it up to speed? So this is one area that Gdce could actually focus on, maybe allocate a few dedicated staff to assist, because let's face it, Cambodia don't have 1 million product to export, okay? We don't have 200 product to export. We have very narrow area of export base. So this is something that Gdce could actually sit down to say, okay, what are the area, what are the few products that we can help, and from there they could target this company and work out a very focused technical assistance. And this one, the Swiss contact or the German government could actually easily help us. And for this matter, Jeremy, I'm looking at you. You can also step in to help narrow that. Because in the case of Cambodia, if we don't help the SME, I think it defeats the whole purpose of this agreement, because Cambodia economy is an SME economy. Of course, I'm not saying we shouldn't help DHL, but look, DHL, you have the lawyer, you have the economist, you have the technical, you have the IT, you get a whole thing already to take care. I don't think we really need to focus on a big guy like DHL. I'm not saying we're not helping you, but I'm saying the focus of the Gdce shouldn't be really on the big guy, but the focus will be more on the smaller Cambodian company, right? Because DHL have the resource already, so they have the capability, they have the analytical aspect, they can decipher, they can work out the rule, everything already. So a small gesture from Gdce will suffice, but you're going to need more than a small gesture from Gdce to help the Cambodian SME. So I think all in all, I think this RCEP and Robin have Robin and Sophia have took quite a bit of time to explain the legalese of this agreement, but it's all boils down to simplistic aspect of this rule, right? And I'm glad to say that I have followed quite closely the recent ministerial conference of the WTO, and in a way, WTO still matter to us, how their decision, the recent decision on a few area of pharmaceutical, of electronic commerce, that sort of thing. It does matter, but in the case of our topic today, the WTO trade facilitation agreement matter, because when you implement the category C, it's a lot of technical system that we could benefit from the major development partner, whether Germany, whether the EU, ARISE Plus, or the Swiss contact. And this matter, the Japanese are quite, JICA is quite a viable development partner to work with. So I think I would say we should further engage this development partner, because now with what's happening with the war in Ukraine, the ongoing, the rising, the inflation, the supply chain disruption, more than ever now, we need to intensify the work in trade facilitation. We work to help more this the small enterprise to be able to deliver. Well, in this case, e-commerce is not about big shipment like the garment industry, the footwear industry. It's about small shipment, small assignment that if we can improve their process, we could make a big impact. Bear in mind that this whole supply chain disruption have a direct impact on our economy. So we need to really tap this trade facilitation under the RCEP agreement to make sure that our economic recovery is much smoother than it could have been. So I would think this is some of the point that I want to highlight. But all in all, I think on the technical aspect, there's no substitute than to digest to it. There's not much we at this webinar level can do, because it requires more commitment on the trader themselves to try to understand at least the minimum requirement of that. And after that, that's where the role of Gdce can step in to assist, to improve, to facilitate that sort of thing. Yeah. So basically, I would say, Sebastian have done a great job to sort of like put the whole thing together. It's all boils down to the cost issue. I think Prayak, yes, I think you have really focused on the small express shipment, which is quite good. But I want to touch on one of the important thing that Kui Peng have mentioned, which is the role of the government private sector partnership, public-private sector partnership. This is very important. It has been many years already since we have that, but I think now it's at the operational and the technical level. It has developed, it has alive on its own now. So we don't hear much outside the industry, the particular specific industry, but I think within the government working group, it has alive on its own. It's operating. It's improving, it's the efficiency coming in, and this is something that I'm quite happy to hear, and I'm glad to hear from Sinavith that you have a very close relationship in terms of working relationship with the Japanese Business Association, the Freight Forwarder Association. These are good association to work with, and particularly the Japanese. They're very low-key, but they're very demanding per se, in their own way. But let's face it, Japan is one of the biggest trader, biggest investor in Cambodia. And of course, China is the biggest one. But I think between the two economies, they're quietly moving into our local economy. Particularly, you see a lot of small Japanese company moving into Cambodia. So this is very good that you work with the association to help meet some of their concern. Not a lot of concern, but still there's some concern there. So I think all in all, I would say, GDC, you're doing a great job, and I'm very, very proud, very pleased to say that, and that's all I have to say now. Sven.
Thank you. Well, that's a lot, and I think it's a very nice summary of the discussion we've had today. One thing I'm glad that you didn't say, and I think it's the first time since you haven't said it, is that you are going to retire soon, so that somebody else has to train and raise awareness on the agreements. So thank you for not saying it. So we count on you for other similar workshops and webinars, not only on RCEP, but on other free trade agreement, because we still need you. As you say in your introduction, you've been a keen observant of what happened in the last 20 years and plus, as your role as a negotiator for the WTO. So you are best placed to also say, like, we come as a Excellency section that was mentioning in our previous dialogue, we've come a long way, and people don't always realize how much progress has been made in the past 20 years since the WTO times. So thank you for insisting on this aspect as well.
Well, Swan, I want to say that I was alluding a bit in my intervention about the Ukraine war, the supply chain, that sort of thing. Basically, now we are gearing up for next month's biggest event of, I would say, biggest event of the year, because the ASEAN Foreign Minister meeting is in fact the biggest event of the year now that we are chairing the ASEAN chairmanship here. So it's going to be one intensive week of, my God, like 20, 30 meetings, the minister all over flying, the Russian foreign minister is coming, everybody is coming. So I was sort of alluding a bit, and this is where I'll be focusing for my next 2 weeks is on the ASEAN Foreign Minister meeting, hopefully we get to hear a lot of geopolitical, geoeconomic dimension as it would relate to the topic we discussed today. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Spana. So that's a message for Jeremy, that please no workshop or seminar until the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting for Sipana. Thank you, Excellency. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. With this, I'd like to give the floor back to Jeremy for a few concluding remarks. And thanks again, everyone, for joining on my behalf. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sven. So here we are at the end of today's dialogue, and as you heard earlier, at the end of a series of 5 dialogues focusing on different aspects of the RCEP agreement. Can I start off by thanking all of today's speakers once again for the excellent presentations and the discussions that we had. Today's dialogue is just one piece in a larger puzzle about how to make the RCEP agreement work. We kicked off this series back in November, before the RCEP agreement had even entered into force. And since then, we have proceeded through the chapters on e-commerce, rules of origin, trade and services, investment, and finishing today with customs and trade facilitation. I really hope that the 5 dialogues have raised your awareness about the importance of this new trade agreement and teased you into wanting to learn more about them, and ultimately inform you how to really make use of what this agreement offers, essential for helping and supporting your business to grow. If you found today's dialogue interesting, but perhaps missed out on one of the previous ones, don't fear, you can watch them all again, perhaps more than once if you wish. So we will share the link with you where the previous dialogues are posted, and in a week or so, this dialogue will also be posted online. So don't worry if you didn't manage to catch everything either today or from the previous workshops. As this is the final dialogue, can I also say a few thank yous? Firstly, to all the co-hosts of these dialogues, the Ministry of Commerce, the Council for the Development of Cambodia, and today the General Department for Customs and Excise. We really appreciate your support and having the opportunity to work with you to bring these dialogues to the public. I would also like to reiterate my thanks to the Australian government for its support of ERIA, and also our friends at the Australian Embassy in Cambodia, who have always been generous with their time and enthusiasm for ERIA's activities. So thank you again. A constant presence at these dialogues has been His Excellency Sotsipana. We feel truly honored and humbled to have had you participate in these dialogues, benefiting from your wisdom and insight, and of course always giving ERIA extra homework to do, knowing how we should follow up. So you give us the work, we won't let you retire. That's our deal. Another presence, constant presence at these dialogues has been the Asian Trade Centre, whether through Deborah Elms or today with Sebastian. So can I also pass on my thanks and gratitude to ATC for your mentoring of us about the finer details of the RCEP agreement. Sven Calabo is, of course, the creator and conductor of this whole series, developing and organizing each dialogue, bringing them to life on the small screen in front of you, drawing on his deep knowledge of trade and his wide and expansive networks of experts and the private sector. Thank you, Sven, for bringing this series to us all. Can I also thank my colleagues here in Jakarta who have helped so much and have worked so much to bring this series to you. Firstly, my colleague Lina Mauladina for managing and coordinating this series of events, and also to Dega for all his technical contributions to ensure that this series was delivered smoothly online. Excellency Sotsipana, Dr. Sang Sinavith, ladies and gentlemen, on this it really is time to close the public-private dialogue series. ERIA, of course, won't be going away, so do keep an eye out for what we are up to and do keep in touch with us. Thank you, everyone.